Super hard steel alloy armor. Before anyone welded a single plate of wonder metal, the mobile suit was basically a walking tank made of hardened steel. The Principality of Zeon built its entire war machine on super hard steel alloy, the material wrapped around the MS-06 Zaku II, a machine standing 17.5 meters tall and weighing 56.2 tons empty. It was never meant to be exotic. It was meant to be cheap, weldable in orbital factories, and produced fast enough to arm a colony cluster that had a fraction of the Earth Federation's industry. A refined version, super hard tensile steel, showed up on later Zeon machines and squeezed out more durability from the same basic recipe. Against other steel-armored suits it worked perfectly well, which is why the Zaku spent the opening week of the one-year war slaughtering Federation warships almost unopposed. Against a 120mm round from another Zaku's machine gun, though, it split open. That was the standard everyone accepted, right up until the day it stopped being the standard. Luna Titanium Alloy Armor. The material that made the Gundam a Gundam was never designed to be armor at all. Luna Titanium was a super high tensile alloy developed at the Federation's Luna 2 asteroid base, originally intended to line the interior of thermonuclear reactors, where it had to shrug off heat and radiation without degrading. Someone noticed it also absorbed physical shock better than anything else in the arsenal, and the Project V machines, the RX-78-2 Gundam, the RX-77 gun cannon, the RX-75 gun tank, were skinned in it. The numbers tell the story. The RX-78-2 stood roughly a meter taller than a Zaku II and still came in lighter, at 43.4 tons empty. Zeon machine gun fire scratched it, bazooka hits bounced. Shar Aznable, watching his rounds do nothing, remarked that he'd never seen a mobile suit take that kind of beating and keep walking. It had two real weaknesses: beam weapons went straight through it, and heat blades like the goofs cut it open. And it was absurdly expensive. Titanium ceramic composite armor. Here's the part that gets forgotten. The Federation could not afford to armor an army in Luna Titanium, so the RGM-79GM, the suit that actually won the war by weight of numbers, got a compromise. Titanium ceramic composite layered a ceramic material over a titanium base, adding heat resistance and a second layer of protection at a fraction of the cost and production time. It was good. It was not Luna Titanium. That gap is exactly why GMs die in bulk on screen while the RX-78 walks through the same fire, and the developers of the GM project knew they were accepting that trade months before the machines rolled out. The composite outlived the war by decades. The Titan's RX-178 Gundam Mk2, one of the most famous Gundams ever built, was armored in titanium ceramic composite rather than anything more advanced. A Gundam that was, in armor terms, a downgrade from a machine built 9 years earlier. Anti-beam coating armor. Since no metal in the universal century stops a megaparticle beam, engineers stopped trying to block beams and started trying to survive one. Anti-beam coating is a sacrificial layer sprayed onto a surface, usually a shield, that vaporizes and disperses beam energy instead of transmitting it into the plate underneath. The standard Federation shield of the one-year war was a triple honeycomb structure of Luna Titanium with anti-beam coating over the face, which is how a GM could raise a slab of metal against a beam rifle and occasionally live. The coating burns away as it works, so protection is finite and non-renewable in the field. An earlier relative, a semi-transparent coating originally used as a laser medium in laser weaponry, served as anti-laser armor in the years before the war. Once megaparticle weapons took over the battlefield, that older coating became a curiosity, and the sacrificial approach became doctrine for the next century. The full armor system. When you can't invent better armor, you bolt on more of it. The FSW's plan, the full armor system and weapon system, took a finished RX-78 and buried it under supplementary armor plating, stuffed with extra ordnance, producing the FA-78-1 full armor Gundam. The philosophy was blunt. A mobile suit that survives 3 extra hits and carries a rocket launcher on its shoulder is worth more than an elegant one. The armor was designed to be shed, so once it was chewed off or the ammunition ran dry, the pilot purged the whole package and fought on in the standard machine underneath. The idea never died. Nearly a century later, the same logic produced the full-armor Unicorn Gundam, which hung so much armor and weaponry on an RX-0 that the suit could barely be recognized until it started jettisoning pieces mid-battle. Crude, heavy, and unfashionable, and it kept working for 100 years. Chobham armor. The nickname came from the armor. The RX-78 NT-1 was called Alex, Partly from armor layered examination, the project name for the modular plating it was built to test, and that plating is the franchise's first use of Chobham armor, named for the real composite armor developed for British tanks at Chobham, Surrey. In practice, it was a set of heavy plates grafted over the suit's existing Luna titanium, pushing the machine from 40 tons empty to 50 with the armor mounted. The weight was punishing enough that extra thrusters and verniers were fitted just to keep the suit's mobility from collapsing. It earned its cost inside 6, absorbing a point-blank shotgun blast from a Kempfer and a chain mine detonation without the Alex being gutted. The plates could be shed in sections when speed mattered more than survival, and the design fed directly into later Federation machines like the GM Cannon II. Gundarium Alpha and Beta armor. Zeon lost the war and immediately went shopping through the wreckage. Researchers at the asteroid base Axis got their hands on Luna titanium, reverse-engineered it, and renamed the result after the machine that had humiliated them, Gundarium, literally the metal the Gundam is made of. Gundarium Alpha is effectively a reproduction near identical in properties to the original Federation alloy, which by itself was a serious industrial achievement for a defeated remnant hiding in the asteroid belt. Gundarium Beta followed as a refinement, tuning the material properties rather than reinventing them. Neither is glamorous, and neither gets named on screen very often, but the lineage matters. Every high-end alloy in the Universal Century after UC0079 descends from Federation reactor lining that Zeon exiles copied in secret. The Federation, meanwhile, retroactively adopted the Zeon name for its own material, which is why Luna Titanium and Gundarium Alpha refer to the same substance in different books. Gundarium Gamma armor. The third reproduction is the one that changed the map. Produced at Axis in September UC0083 and formally introduced in UC0087, Gundarium Gamma was lighter than its predecessors while keeping excellent durability, and the composition data was passed from Axis to the AU-Zieg and on to Anaheim Electronics. That single technology transfer is why second-generation mobile suits of the Grips conflict outclass the Titan's hardware so consistently. The RMS-099 Rick Diaz and the transformable MSZ-006 Zeta Gundam are wearing an alloy the Federation didn't even know existed. The Federation only learned of it when Anaheim handed over an RMS-108 Marasai as a political gesture, effectively gift-wrapping the secret to keep both sides of a civil war buying weapons from the same supplier. Gundarium Gamma became the default premium armor of the era, and Anaheim's willingness to sell it to everyone tells you more about UC politics than any speech in the show. Gundarium Epsilon armor. The strangest branch of the family was never about stopping bullets. Gundarium Epsilon was developed by Anaheim Electronics rather than Axis, and its defining property is radiation shielding, a direct callback to the original Luna Titanium's job-lining fusion reactors. It exists because of one machine, the Epsi Gundam, a design using nuclear pulse propulsion, which is exactly what it sounds like. You detonate nuclear charges behind the vehicle and ride the shockwave. Armor that merely resists a beam rifle is useless there. You need a hull that keeps the pilot alive while the machine repeatedly sets off nuclear explosions a few meters from its own back. Epsilon is the reminder that in the Universal Century, armor is not one problem. It's radiation, heat, physical shock, beam dispersal, and weight, all fighting each other, and different variants of the same base alloy were tuned toward different corners of that fight. The I-field barrier armor. Some defenses aren't armor at all. The I-field is pure Minovsky physics, a generated field that repels the megaparticles making up a beam, meaning the shot is deflected before it ever contacts a surface. Its debut was appropriately obscene. The MA-08 Big Zam, a mobile armor roughly 60 meters tall, waded through Federation beam fire at Solomon, while shells and beams alike failed to reach the hull. Later generators shrank enough to fit a mobile suit, appearing on the GP-03 Dendrobium and, decades on, built into the center of the RX-0 Unicorn's shield, where it could block anything from a beam saber to battleship-grade fire. The catch is permanent and unfixable. An I-field stops beams and does absolutely nothing about a solid slug or a physical blade, and the generators overheat, forcing cooldowns that a patient enemy can wait out. Every I-field machine dies the same way. Someone throws metal at it. The Psycho Frame armor. Technically it's a frame, not armor, and it still belongs on this list because it changed what armor was for. The Psycho Frame embeds Psycommu computer chips into the structural material itself at the molecular level, so the suit's skeleton reads the pilot's thoughts directly. It debuted in UC0093 on the RX-93 New Gundam and the MSN-04 Sazabi, and its documented effects escalate from improved reaction time to physically pushing an asteroid off course. A generation later, the RX-0 Unicorn Gundam was built with a full psychoframe body, hidden beneath conventional white armor panels that split apart when the NTD system activates, exposing glowing frame material along every limb. That transformation is the whole design thesis. The outer armor is a lid on the real machine. Psychoframe also gets described as more resistant when it receives a pilot's will, which is either advanced physics or spiritualism with a model number, depending on which book you read. Armed armor. The RX-0 series is the only place in Gundam where armor is the name of a weapon. The armed armor units are detachable psychoframe packages bolted onto Unicorn-type machines, and each letter code does something different. Armed armor VN, mounted on the Banshee's forearm, is a treated striking claw that transforms in destroy mode to seize a target and crush it with vibrations, and its beam-resistant coating lets it double as a shield. Armed Armor BS, short for Beam Smart Gun, feeds sensor data to the pilot through the PSI-COMMU and fires a beam that travels in a wave pattern, making the shot genuinely hard to dodge. Armed Armor XC is a backpack that raises generator output while adding more psychoframe mass to boost the machine's psycho wave capability. Armed Armor DE is a huge shield booster carried by the Phoenix. They are weapons, thrusters, and amplifiers wearing the word armor almost as a joke. The MCA structure armor. By the UC-120s, the problem was no longer strength, but space. The MCA structure, multiple construction armor, solved it by embedding electronic systems directly inside the armor layers instead of packing them into the torso, using techniques borrowed from psychoframe manufacturing. Developed through Anaheim's Formula project, it is the single reason the F-91 exists in the form it does. Look at the numbers and the shift is violent. The RX-78-2 was an 18-meter machine weighing 43.4 tons empty, while the F-91 stands 15.2 meters and weighs 7.8 tons empty. That is not an incremental improvement, it's a different class of object, and it was achieved by making the skin do the thinking. The trade-off arrived immediately. Thinner armor on smaller frames meant that even suits clad in genuine Gundarium were far more vulnerable to physical hits than the thick-plated prototypes of 60 years earlier. The beam shield armor. Once armor got thin, defense moved off the hull entirely. The beam shield generates a plane of energy much like a beam saber's blade, projected from a compact generator, and unlike an eye field, it stops both beam attacks and solid projectiles. The plane is divided into sections that can be switched on and off individually to save power, and sections automatically cut out when they're about to intersect the mobile suit's own body. A safety feature that exists because the shield will happily amputate its owner's arm. The Crossbone Gundams mount their generators on the forearms and exploit the malleability of the energy to shape short beam blades out of the shield itself. There is one obvious drawback, and it's tactical rather than technical. A beam shield is a brilliant glowing plate in the middle of a dark battlefield. It stops the shot, and it also tells every enemy in the sector exactly where you are. The ABC Mantle Armor. The most piratical armor in the franchise is a cloak. Used by Crossbone Vanguard machines around UC-0133, the anti-beam coating mantle is a sheet of cloth treated with anti-beam coating, thrown over the mobile suit like a cape, and covering everything but the head. It draws no power at all, which matters enormously for suits already burning energy on beam shields, and it is dark, so at distance an enemy sees a floating helmet instead of a target. The limit is brutally specific. Roughly 5 beam rifle shots and the coating is spent, leaving the pilot wearing ordinary fabric. It's a consumable, and the consumption rate is why almost nobody outside the Crossbone lineage bothered with it. The idea was pushed far enough that layered mantle material was eventually built into a suit's armor outright, producing the Crossbone Gundam X1 full cloth, a Gundam armored in its own shredded cape. Gundanium alloy armor. Everything about After Colony's wonder metal is deliberately unobtainable. Gundanium is smelted from lunar titanium and GND ore, material from meteoroids that struck the moon, containing substances nobody has fully catalogued, and it can only be produced in the high-temperature plasma that forms in zero gravity. The compound is adjusted at nanoscale, a process so delicate it can only be carried out at gravitationally stable Lagrange points, and the annealing that hardens it is done by electromagnetic radiation from the sun. The results justify the theater. It's several times stronger and more heat-resistant than the titanium alloy on mass production suits, it survives atmospheric re-entry unaided, it's electrically neutral, and it doesn't register on radar, so a Gundanium machine is effectively invisible until it's close enough to kill you. Beams still hurt it, though the alloy creates a repelling effect that reduces the damage. 5 colonies built 5 Gundams out of it, and the cost is precisely why there were only 5. Neo-titanium armor. The sequel to the Wonder Metal is the boring metal, and that's the point. Neo-titanium is the armor of the Serpent, the mass-production suit that fills the sky in endless waltz, and it exists because Romefeller's accountants asked an unglamorous question: how close can we get to Gundanium without the zero-gravity plasma forges and the Lagrange point manufacturing? The answer was roughly twice the strength of ordinary titanium at about half the weight, inferior to Gundanium, and enormously easier and cheaper to produce. That trade is the entire plot of the OVA. A Serpent loses a one-on-one fight with a Gundam and nobody is surprised, but the Serpent can be built by the 100, deployed with missile launchers and Gatling guns, and thrown at pilots who cannot be replaced at all. It is the most realistic armor philosophy in the franchise. Don't win the materials science race, win the production line. Nanoskin armor. The armor on the Prez Gundam isn't really a material, it's a colony. Nanoskin, nanosurface kinetic improvement nervation, is a layer of self-repairing nanomachines forming a chitinous, multi-layered structure of amino sugar-like polymers that mitigates, disperses, and absorbs impact at the molecular level, then rebuilds the damaged area and reinforces what's around it. It also preserves. Technology buried in the mountain cycles stayed pristine and operable for thousands of years under a nanoskin coating, though much of it crumbled the moment air touched it. The same nanomachines produce the Moonlight Butterfly, released from the machine's back as vast glowing wings that disintegrate anything artificial they contact, and reduce civilizations to sand, which is exactly what happened to Earth's previous one. Defensive nanomachines that absorb beam energy and offensive nanomachines that erase cities are the same nanomachines. The full shield is almost an afterthought because the armor is the doomsday weapon. Phase shift armor. Cosmic era armor runs on electricity. Phase shift armor is a special metal that changes phase when current is applied, and while energized it nullifies physical attacks, bullets, blades, missiles, conventional explosives, almost completely. It rolled out in CE-71 on the Earth Alliance's 5 prototype G-weapons, the Duel, Buster, Blitz, Strike, and Aegis. 2 constraints define it. First, it does nothing whatsoever against beams, which is why nearly every PS-equipped machine also carries a shield with anti-beam coating. Second, holding the phase state requires continuous current, so the armor drains the suit's battery the entire time it's active. That's the source of the format's best-known tension. Keep the armor up and the clock runs down. It also announces its state visually, because energized PS armor is brilliantly colored and deactivated PS armor turns a dull, defenseless gray. A Gundam going gray mid-battle is the most efficient piece of storytelling in the entire cosmic era. Trans-phase armor. The obvious fix is not to leave the lights on. Trans-phase armor. Developed by the Earth Alliance for the second wave of prototypes, the Calamity, Forbidden, and Raider, energizes only at the moment of impact, drawing power per hit rather than continuously. The energy saving is enormous, and for machines running on batteries rather than nuclear reactors, it's the difference between a sortie and a stranding. There's a subtle visual consequence too. TP armor doesn't sit in an obvious inactive state, so it never shows the telltale gray of the original system, and enemies lose the ability to read a machine's remaining power from its color. The weakness is inherent to the mechanism. Protection has to be triggered by the strike itself, which makes it excellent against discrete impacts and less impressive against sustained punishment. It was a stopgap, and a fairly short-lived one, because Zaft was solving the same problem from the other direction. Variable phase shift armor. Zaft's answer was to make the armor adjustable. Variable phase shift, introduced in Gundam Seed Destiny and fitted to the second stage series, alters its own strength and therefore its power draw automatically depending on the machine's combat configuration. Full protection when it's needed, reduced draw when it isn't. The ZGMF X56S Impulse demonstrates it most literally, carrying a separate VPS setting for each silhouette pack it equips, with the suit visibly changing color as it switches. In October CE-73, the Earth Alliance stole 3 second-stage units from the plant military colony Armory 1 and reverse-engineered the technology into its Action project machines, including the Strike Noir. Members of Terminal inside Zaft leaked the same data to a secret facility, where it went into the Strike Freedom and the Infinite Justice. Within a single conflict, The most advanced armor in the cosmic era was in the hands of three mutually hostile factions, which is roughly how cosmic era technology always works. Laminated armor. While mobile suits played with electricity, warships used geometry. Laminated armor is an outer layer formed from a single continuous piece rather than connected plates, and that continuity is the whole trick. A beam striking it has its thermal energy dispersed across the entire surface instead of concentrating at the impact point. It's what the Archangel is made of, borrowed from the Orb Union's Izumo-class design, and it's why one prototype assault ship can trade fire with a pursuit fleet and survive. The failure mode is heat accumulation. Spread enough energy over enough hits, and the armor begins to melt. Since the material never actually stops absorbing, it just refuses to fail locally. The Earth Alliance later worked laminated armor into sections of mobile suits like the 105 Dagger and Buster Dagger. It has a glaring blind spot, though. It's built for beams, and at Alaska, the Archangel was hammered by solid ordnance it had no special defense against. Geschmeidig Panzer armor. The most elegant defense in the cosmic era doesn't stop the beam, it steers it. Geschmeidig Panzer, the name translates roughly as supple armor, grew out of Mirage colloid stealth research, using a different colloid particle to bend energy beams away from the machine entirely. It was fitted to the GAT-X252 Forbidden Gundam and its descendants, the Forbidden Blue and Deep Forbidden, as a set of pods that make an already grotesque design look like a folded insect. Underwater, the same pods deflect water and double as propulsion. The vulnerability appears at knife range, where sustained close-beam fire overwhelms the deflection before it can redirect. The Earth Alliance eventually scaled the concept to a genuinely horrifying size, loading oversized Geschmeidig Panzers into abandoned O'Neill-type colonies so that the Requiem, a beam cannon based at the Lunar Daedalus base, could bend its shot between relay points and strike targets it had no line of sight to. Mirror coating armor. The Orb Union went for the pettiest solution available. Give it back. The ORB-01 Akatsuki is plated in a gold reflective coating nicknamed Yata no Kagami, after the mirror of Japanese legend, and it doesn't absorb or disperse incoming beams so much as reflect them. Hit the Akatsuki at a favorable angle and the attacking machine can be destroyed by its own shot, which turns every enemy beam rifle into a liability, and every attack run into a geometry problem. Its most extreme demonstration came when the Akatsuki interposed itself to protect the Archangel from the Minerva's Tannhäuser positron blaster cannon, and dispersed the blast. The limitation is exactly what you'd expect from a mirror. It does nothing against physical rounds, so a machine covered in the most spectacular anti-beam armor in the setting can be shredded by an ordinary autocannon. It is also, unavoidably, bright gold. Subtlety was not the design brief. The Lightwave barrier armor. Eurasia's contribution was a wall of light. The Lightwave barrier is an energy field that blocks physical and energy weapons alike, and its first deployment was the Umbrella of Artemis, an enormous shield protecting the Eurasian Federation's asteroid fortress, and considered effectively impenetrable. It was too. Artemis didn't fall because someone punched through the barrier. It fell because the Blitz Gundam walked in under Mirage colloid stealth while the Umbrella was down, proving that a perfect wall is only as good as the moment you choose to lower it. Eurasia then miniaturized the technology into Armure Lumiere, mounted on the Cat-1X Hyperion Gundam series, a mobile suit that could project a full barrier around itself and use the emitters offensively at close range. The reason it never became standard is mundane and familiar. The power consumption is brutal, and a machine that can only sustain absolute defense for seconds at a time is not a machine you mass produce. E-carbon armor. Anno Domini's standard armor is a rare case of a wonder material that everybody has. E-carbon, ultra-hard carbon, almost certainly something in the family of carbon nanotubes or graphene, was developed by Ioria Schoenberg as a construction material for the orbital elevators, not as armor at all. What made it universal was a decision rather than a discovery. Schoenberg distributed the patent rights freely, so within a generation E-carbon was the skin of practically every mobile suit in the setting, from celestial beings Gundams down to mass-produced enemy machines. That is the opposite of every other entry on this list. There's no exclusive alloy, no zero-gravity forge, no faction hoarding the formula. A GN001 Gundam Exia stands 18.3 meters and weighs 57.2 tons, wearing the same basic material as the machines it's cutting apart. Which raises an obvious question. If everyone has the same armor, why are the Gundams so much harder to kill? The answer isn't the carbon. GN composite armor. The answer is what's hiding inside the carbon. GN composite armor deploys a GN field within the small spaces inside the armor plating rather than around the outside of the machine, so the field reinforces the plate from within and is shielded from the external conditions that make an exposed field unstable. It was first equipped and tested on the GNY-004 Gundam Photon, a second-generation machine, and became standard for Celestial Beings mobile suits from the Exia onward. That single internal detail explains the strange asymmetry of the first season, where Gundams shrug off conventional kinetic fire almost contemptuously but visibly strain against GN particle beams. The armor isn't beam-proof. Beams are simply powerful enough to push it. Trans-Am compounds the effect. Compressed GN particles flooding across the surface during activation strengthen the armor further, which is why a machine glowing red is not just faster but noticeably harder to damage. The GN field armor. Deployed outward instead of inward, the same particles become a wall. A GN field is a barrier of GN particles projected around the machine, and unlike most beam defenses in the franchise, it works against physical attacks as well, because it isn't stopping a specific kind of energy so much as putting a dense particle mass between the suit and everything else. The GN-005 Virtue is the definitive example, a heavy artillery Gundam that can plant itself in the open and simply refuse to be hurt while it fires. The economics are the balancing act. Sustaining a field consumes an enormous volume of particles, competing directly with the thrusters and the beam weapons drawing on the same reserve. So a pilot holding a GN field is a pilot who is not moving fast and not shooting much. Machines running a GN drive Tau, with no true perpetual particle supply, feel that cost far more sharply than the originals do. Nanolaminate armor. No armor in Gundam has reshaped its own setting as completely as this one. Nanolaminate armor is applied more like a coating than a plate, and its defensive properties are powered by the Ahab waves generated by a mobile suit's reactor, which is why the mobile workers of the post-disaster era can't simply be painted with it. Against beams, it is close to absolute. A beam scatters and glides across the surface instead of penetrating, to the point that a city-leveling mobile armor cannon struck a mass-produced Shiden and killed only the rifle in its hands. The consequence is the entire aesthetic of iron-blooded orphans. Beam weapons were effectively abandoned as pointless, and warfare regressed to maces, swords, autocannons, and the Dainsleif railgun. The weaknesses are physical and thermal: blunt impact, sustained hits to the same spot that peel the coating away, and incendiary shells loaded with napalm specifically intended to cook it off. Photon armor. 1,000 years after the Universal Century, armor became light. The YG-111G self is built around a photon frame and covered in photon armor, a full-body field described as a sculptable, short-duration beam shield wrapped around the entire machine, powered by the photon batteries that the Rebuild Century's whole economy and religion are organized around. It is not purely defensive. The armor can be expanded outward to disintegrate a mobile suit that closes too far, or projected forward and fired as a Gundam-shaped blast of energy, and in one of the series' best improvisations it was used as an energy cushion against the compression heat of atmospheric re-entry. The color of the armor shifts with each backpack the G-Self equips. What makes it unnerving in universe is the taboo underneath. Nobody in the Rebuild Century fully understands the technology they're wearing. Because it was reconstructed from ancient blueprints, nobody is permitted to question. Permit-infused armor. The newest armor on the list is barely armor and mostly nervous system. Permet is an element found in mineral deposits scattered unevenly around the solar system, mined on Mercury and the Moon, and its defining property is that separate pieces of it share information with each other. Mix it into structural materials and you get a mobile suit whose plating is also a data network. Permet materialization technology can build device functions directly into metal, so a machine's armor can double as a communication device, though it's extremely expensive and rare. Link the Permet in a pilot's own body to Permet intelligent structures in the armor, and the gun bits become extensions of their limbs, which is how the aerial's bit staves swing into place as a shield without anyone pressing a button. Raise the Permet score and the machine performs better while feeding a data storm back into the pilot's nervous system. The armor protects you and quietly damages you at once. If you want to see more, click the video on screen now.